Good morning, it's Friday the 24th of July. I'm Marit Gwyn and you're watching Europe Today, your morning dose of European news and analysis live here on Euronews. Coming up today, the US administration is imposing a fresh wave of tariffs of between 10 and 12.5% on imports from around 80 trading partners, including the EU, UK, Canada and Japan. The move marks another escalation in President Donald Trump's trade agenda as he sidesteps a Supreme Court ruling earlier this year that struck down many of his previous tariffs. We speak to the EU's top lawmaker on trade, Bernd Lange. And in other news, oil prices have spiked again, hitting $100 per barrel for the first time since May, as the Tehran-backed Houthi rebels strike tankers in the Red Sea. US President Donald Trump has said he will hold Iran responsible for those attacks and that he is considering launching a massive attack on the country. And at least 20,000 people have been evacuated from their homes as wildfires spread in the southwest of France. Spain and Italy are also battling wildfires as the heat continues to grip southern Europe. But first, we're going straight to our top story this morning. US President Donald Trump is imposing a new wave of tariffs on trading partners, including a 10% duty on the EU. The European Commission has said these tariffs are in line with the EU-US trade deal struck last year. The US administration has also reacted to the EU's €890 million fine on Google yesterday, with Trade Representative Jameson Greer saying that the EU is driving massive uncertainty for US exporters and jeopardizing the EU-US trade deal struck a year ago. Well, Bernd Lange is the European Parliament's top lawmaker on trade and was the lead negotiator on the EU-US Trade Pact. He's been in Washington this week, and I caught up with him earlier this morning, and I started by asking him where Trump's new tariffs leaves the EU-US trade deal.
In principle, I guess with this new tariffs, they respect the deal. And this was also one of my major task for this week in Washington, to convince everybody, regardless what else is in the air, that we stick to the deal.
Yet, this many would say is arbitrary. Many would say that Trump is sidestepping Congress, sidestepping the Supreme Court's ruling to find new ways to impose tariffs. Does that worry you, that there will be more fresh rounds of levies targeting the EU again?
I think you are quite right. So Trump and the administration are looking always to solutions for some kind of basis. So now this forced labor issue, so that we as Europeans are not respecting the fight against forced labor is crazy. We have a wonderful legislation, even stronger than the United States has. But nevertheless, it's not my job to judge about that. I guess the courts in the United States will judge about that. And I hope that after the midterms in November, the Congress will take over a little bit more, like it is written down in the Constitution of the United States. Article 1, paragraph 8, trade policy is in the hands of the Congress. So I hope this will give also additional stability.
The US administration has fiercely criticised an EU decision to fine Google under its digital rules yesterday. Jameson Greer, the trade representative, saying this jeopardises the EU-US trade deal, calling also for a ceasefire, suggesting that the EU-US are in some kind of trade war. Do you fear more retaliation now from the US?
More or less in all my talks here in Washington, this DMA and DSA, the digital regulation in Europe, has played a role. And there was a little bit the fear that because of the fine against Google, this tariff regime starting today would change. Luckily not. But the statement from Jameson Greer was quite clear, and a lot of other talked in the same direction. But of course, for us, it's not mixed. So we have the tariff, the deal of Scotland, and we have some regulation where everybody, not only US companies, but also Europeans and whatever, Indian companies, has to respect it. This I try to make clear as well. But nevertheless, DMA, DSA is in the focus in the United States. And to be honest, I expect that some action will come.
The EU's top trade lawmaker, Bernd Lange there. Moving on now, the EU has agreed a new round of sanctions against Russia after weeks of frantic negotiations. Our correspondent Jorge Liboreiro joins me now to discuss the final result, which I think we can say, Jorge, has been watered down. So tell us what's in and what's out.
Yes, we're going to see the elements now on the screen of what's inside this package. And I want to highlight especially that the price cap on Russian oil has been frozen at $44 per barrel, which is good news for the European Commission. This is estimated to cost Russia 3.5 billion euros in the next 12 months. So an important measure. We see other elements now very financial, very focused on the military complex as well. But I also have to say that several elements fell apart during the negotiations. Fisheries removed because of Portugal and Germany, Patriarch Kirill removed because of Bulgaria, and an entry ban on Russian soldiers, which was to be the striking element of this package, was watered down into a legal basis because of objections from France and Italy.
And Jorge, Greece almost derailed this package. They were demanding exemptions. Did they get what they wanted?
Interestingly, Greece won the battle because they did get the exemption to continue transport of Russian LNG after this year. This exemption comes with three conditions. The transport needs to happen to non-EU clients, needs to happen with contracts signed before the war, and needs to happen below volumes of 2025. So these conditions are meant to limit the derogation in practice, but at the same time, this is a major victory for Athens. It's a very controversial request.
Indeed. Jorge, very briefly, what are your main takeaways? You followed all the packages. This is the 21st. Your main takeaways?
Yes, my main takeaways are the Commission is running out of ideas, as we saw with fish. The second is that the threshold for economic pain is going down, as we saw with Greece and maritime transport. And the third one is that after Viktor Orban left Hungary, member states need to speak louder to defend their national interest. The veto power is still alive and kicking.
Yes, indeed, Jorge. We did see that this week. Thank you so much for that analysis. And as we heard there, this latest package of sanctions has raised questions about how national economic interests could be undermining political will to keep tightening sanctions on Russia. Well, I'm now joined live by Ukraine's Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions Policy, Vladislav Vlasyuk. Very good to have you with us, sir. Listen, we know that limiting Russia's ability to generate revenues from energy is crucial. What do you make of the fact that we now have a country, Greece, which has been able to get an exemption and will continue to make revenue from shipping Russian LNG? I believe we might have some issues connecting to the Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions there. Perhaps, Jorge, we can come back to you while we're waiting to reconnect to Kyiv there. So, as you said, this threshold for economic pain is going down. We've seen that with Greece, in a different way with Bulgaria opposing the sanctioning of Patriarch Kirill. And you said you see this potentially becoming an issue as we move into the future now and look into the 22nd package.
Yeah, there have been many packages of sanctions, Mary. We need to be honest here, and this is the fifth year of the war, so member states are also tired of making that many sacrifices when it comes to their economy. And Russia used to be one of our largest trading partners, so we need to keep that in mind of how much the economy has changed.
Indeed. Jorge, I believe we can cross back to Kyiv and to Ukraine's Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions. So I'm very sorry for the technical issues. Good to have you with us. So first, can you tell us how you respond now to the fact that Greece has negotiated a special exemption to the sanctions package and will continue to make revenue from shipping Russian LNG? No, I believe we cannot connect with Vladislav Vlasyuk. Can you hear me, sir? Can we try once more?
Yes.
Good. Okay, let's move on. We hope to bring back Vladislav Vlasiuk. Jorge, let's bring you in again. Glad to have you with me on my side this morning.
Always for sanctions available.
Perhaps briefly on the fisheries issue. Has that now been completely discarded? Do you think there'll be another attempt?
It's an interesting question. I think for the time being, they will not try again because it was shut down completely. And the Commission doesn't like when their proposals are shut down in this way and then completely removed. They can tolerate that a proposal is watered down, like other elements in this package, but they do not like when it's completely shut down. So I think for the time being, fisheries, we're not going to hear Ursula von der Leyen talk about, again, cod and pollock anytime soon.
Okay, Jorge, thank you so much. And we apologise for those technical issues to our viewers there. Now we're moving on because 9 members of the European Parliament travelled to China this week in a bid to thaw years of frozen relations between the EU institution and Beijing. But with a record trade imbalance and China accused of being an enabler of Russia's aggression in Ukraine, the visit raises as many questions as it hopes to answer. Our EU correspondent Angela Scugin spoke to European Parliament Vice President Javi López, who was part of that trip, and began by asking him why now.
What we want is relaunch our relations and defend the European interests, especially address our difference and explode and use our areas of cooperation. Obviously, multilateralism, the defense of the rules-based order, international law, the United Nations chapter, fight against climate change, and ensure that we have economic governance that it's balanced, that it's stable, that it's certainty, full of certainty. It's in our mutual interest. But at the same time, we want to address our differences, especially the war in Ukraine and how China could play a stronger role to find a solution and a peace after the brutal aggression, and obviously tackling trade imbalance. That is important concern for the European public opinion, for the European economy, trying to ensure that we have full access to the Chinese.
And maybe if we look at Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and China's support for that, as well as that eye-watering trade deficit in China's favour, how did the MEPs on this trip communicate regarding these points, and was the message received? How did the Chinese react?
We're extremely consistent during all our meetings, repeating these 2 messages: the need of a full implication of China on the resolution of a just peace for Ukraine, and especially underlining how the brutal invasion, illegal invasion, unjustified invasion of the Russian Federation to Ukraine is attacking all the European architecture of security. And at the same time, we also are backing, supporting, pushing in the ongoing negotiations that the European Commission has with China, with Commissioner Šefčovič, related to trade. A few weeks ago, they had an important meeting in Brussels with a joint press conference. This will continue this autumn, especially on October.
And you mentioned that October deadline. This is the month allocated by the European Commissioner for Trade, Maroš Šefčovič, to establish some kind of conclusion when it comes to this trade deficit. And the inference here is that if China doesn't come to the table and if agreement isn't found, that the EU will act. You've been on the ground in China. How do you think that they will respond to these hardball tactics come October?
Well, they have their arguments on that about the application of the World Trade Organization rules. But we are insisting on our unsustainable reality for us, politically and economically, that it's this size, this volume of trade surplus of China, trade imbalance, that it's 1 billion per day. That it has to be addressed, and we should find solutions on this regard.
And is the solution triggering the trade bazooka?
Well, we have our negotiations ongoing, and what we expect is results and deliver solutions through these negotiations, through dialogue and cooperation.
That was the European Parliament's Vice President Javi López. And just like that, it's time for us to say Goodbye for the summer. This is our final episode of Europe Today before we take a short break. We've shared 155 mornings with you here on Euronews, so a big thank you goes to you, our viewers, for tuning in. We've brought you conversations with leaders, ministers and top lawmakers. So, before we go, let's take a look back at some of the moments that defined this season on Europe Today.
That is absurd and ridiculous. Spain has a coherent foreign policy.
We have supported Ukraine more than the United States.
This is not a product to deregulate. This is a product to modernize.
Clearly, Montenegro is doing very well. We have already approved the Working Party to start drafting the accession treaty.
Dying flamingos, depressed turtles.
Russia's losing ground on the battlefield. It's losing ground diplomatically. It was hoping for a long time to divide Europeans. We've seen exactly the opposite.
And did you discuss Donald Trump's Board of Peace?
Most European countries cannot join.
We haven't seen Russia really taking the talk seriously. Russia keeps on bombing.
When you don't have much money, invest wisely.
This is the mother of all trade deals. It's something the Commission loves to say. But for Europeans, we're watching Euronews today and they go, what does that mean?
This is the largest trade deal ever.
Why is Putin deciding to target Latvia in this hybrid war at this moment?
Because he's losing in Ukraine. Simple.
Yeah, Russia is sending its message that they want to continue this war.
GDP per capita in Germany, the industrial giant of Europe, is now below that of the state of West Virginia.
What I feel these days is that I'm more proud than ever to be European.
But your party has been tinkering away at the Green Deal, rolling back parts of the Green Deal.
My party is Ursula von der Leyen party. My party is the party who did the Green Deal.
Being gay is not a choice, but being homophobic is a choice.
I don't think we will go back to the times where things were more peaceful. I think in these situations everybody reacts more abruptly than usual.
Yes, Russia is an enemy. They're attacking a European country.
We think that 2026 should be the year when dictatorships are over.
Trump is desperate for a deal, and they have maneuvered him. They've played him like a violin.
Europe is the only playground within which member states, nations, even France, can actually play a significant role.
Just a taste there of the voices we've heard on Europe Today over the past months. And now our Europe editor, Maria Tadeo, joins me in the studio. Maria, good morning. It's been a busy season for you. What are your reflections?
Look, for all of us, Merit, and I think when we began to work on this show, Europe Today, and this revamp of Euronews, and Euronews undeniably has been a staple of European broadcasting now for more than 3 decades. But we know the world is changing, and we're seeing dramatic structural changes, very rough geopolitics, and we set out to answer 2 fundamental questions, and that is, what does it mean for Europe and what does it mean for Europeans? And look, whether we did a good job or not, ultimately that belongs to our viewers and our readers. But I think when you look at that clip that you just played, it does show the commitment, the very hard work, the responsibility of our newsroom. We take our editorial standards incredibly seriously. We take our independence incredibly seriously. And we take this idea of putting a story from a very unique European perspective every day, 155 episodes, that's a lot of work. We take it very seriously. And of course, we can only thank our EU News team. That is the core of our operations here in Brussels. They broke news, they delivered stories, they committed to original reporting. Our team of correspondents, I think if you watch Europe Today, you've seen them all across Europe talking to the right people and the right story that day. Some very, very difficult hours or capitals, and that is the joy of Euronews, our very vast network of European correspondents all across the continent. Of course, our team that you don't see on camera, but they do a very important job behind the scenes, and that is our production, our technical team, our cameramen, our producers, digital producers, executive producers, Paul and Nico, Maeve, of course, our chief anchor, who's been doing great work for us this season and also this week in Dublin, and our hair and makeup, the entire team that comes together to deliver a story and also capture this European zeitgeist. And Merit, look, at this point, I cannot say too much. Ultimately, this is TV, but I got to tease it. We are in television. This is the business of TV, but we are working on new formats and new projects. We set out on a path, and we're going to double down on this path come September. We read and appreciate all the feedback that we get from our viewers, all the emails and suggestions that they make. We take all of this into account. And look, we cannot wait to be back in September, and it's also been great to work with you. You're very talented. You have a great future ahead of you. So, it's a privilege, and I'm very happy to have been on the show with all of you.
Well, thank you so much to you as well, Maria, for all your leadership, of course. And that brings us to the end of this show. We'll be back, as Maria said, after the summer, ready to do it all again. Until then, on behalf of everyone here at Europe Today and Euronews, thank you for making us part of your mornings, and we'll see you very soon.